two of the somewhat longer sequences moving out of. The first one was written a few years ago, now 2008, I guess, from the references. There's always this problem of writing poems with contemporary political reference to go on a date in a way quite quickly, but on the other hand, it's just the details that change, nothing else changes, so apply it as you will. Skips and charms against recession. White persimmon, pianissimo, without permission. On our which modernity depends, and if whether yours or mine it merits any more than a word defends, or any other language inherits. After falling asleep, reading Defoe, he said he would send a man with every pursuivance of squeeze and snout, and where we now doubted, we would find ourselves doubled. This says what I think it, or does it mean that nature aborts an errant operational culture? If you listen carefully, you will hear the cadence of code names erupt in such a caustic acoustic, you'll wish you could forget you've been warned. A shifter such as Britain, in Spicer's Holy Grail, in Morgana's Triads, in a speech by a Scottish PM. Intention, retrospect, judgment. Yesterday, when urgent desire threatened to eclipse them. The author's other works include Newts and Nymphs, essays on a private pond. He is said to have said, "There's a receipt for everything, and everything in its receipt is the 21st century's true motto." One whom one, a slight yo-yo, open here. The language, landscape of parenthesis watching, a version of pastoral, a shifter such as Britain, when Demetrius, by order of the emperor, as Plutarch tells us, made the voyage, thunder and lightning, the locals said a demon of great power was departing. Apostrophes make no apology. Despite the initial resemblance between the Anglican Church and Agatha Christie, fate can be denied. Shelley's bubbles burst on Watt's ever-rolling stream, and Heraclitus weeps. There's still dormant respect in a morbid aspect. The author's other works include morticians and their mortification, the imaginary conversations of Lucian, Landor, and Beddoes. She is Rambo. A bit less and the rest or a similar. That journey was 1,000 years ago. What would we say if someone went to Pound Stretcher looking for the key to the modernist code? And if he found it, should we send him or her to a convent or convention? Never did a nerve have such an ending as in the quest for the Sangral, whereas so often in the wordland, inaction is the key. Some days Parson Hawker couldn't tell a copse from a corpse, even though considered as timber, woods are, if not misprinted, deeply verbatim. One restless spectre, shamefully faltering, made of extremity until it was destroyed by a hard quake. Welcome to Healy. Healy is an area of Sheffield, quite near where we live, and its main architectural feature is a very large steelworks called Lancelot Works. It's true. You can't make it up. And the building's still there. At least one wall of it's still there. It still says Lancelot Works. And but all you can get in there now is New Age candles. And it actually says Ancient Wisdom underneath Lancelot. Welcome to Healy. Lancelot Works. Ancient Wisdom right under arch. Ho for the sangral! Sir Galahad drives on. At recycling, leave it there, pal, quoth Sir Tristram. It wasn't, as things turned out, a beetle in his matchbox, but his indisputable real world, which on the day of publication changed beyond recognition. And it wasn't what he once mistakenly called feathered water. Nor were all the guilty innocent in any common sense, if there is one. These lines confuse three people, but weren't they all confused from the start? The reader is advised not to try to name them. Dear reader, relax. Insert a portrait of the author in pastoral pinstripe. Remember that a forthcoming article remarks he is nearing 60. Are those laughter lines heroic couplets? How many times has he stepped in the same river? Write his obit and say in less than 500 words why he thought that way. I looked over yonder, and what did I see but what I'd been told? All the white knights in the island of Britain, 2008, searching bad debt for a quid pro quo, pianissim, passim, permissionissimo, particularly silent corrections. The distance, I thought, it doesn't. The author's other works are too numerous and scarce to be listed here, but he sometimes remarked that hum, when erased, leaves an, as well as bling and bled, not to mention ility and iliation. He also often wondered what R had done, to be heaped with rocks, refuse, rubbish, ravage, ruins, and resurrection. It's not as if meaning means the imaginary something like menagerie, a hinge of exchange or henge that hangs in the air, and the air, as if obliged, hangs itself.
I enjoyed them.
Ah, you're a shy old one. Well, I'm going to try reading something which is really for 7 voices, no 6. So you'll have to sort of imagine those 6 voices. It's based on Blake's Vela. I call it Vela because I had a conversation with Gavin not long ago when we were last here as to what this book of Blake's is supposed to be called. Because it could be Vala, and Gavin convinced me that the Vela is probably the likeliest. I mean, I suppose there's the other possibility is Vala, isn't it? But it's like, who would that true Vala see or something? So Vela, I'm going to...
Not as strong a sound though, is it?
No, Vela, I think. That's right, but yeah, most of you know, Blake's Vela is the only one of the prophetic books, or at least what's still surviving prophetic books, which was never illuminated. But Blake did sketch out the illuminations for it. There's, in fact, the whole poem as it exists in one of its forms is sketched out largely on the back of the proof sheets of Blake's engravings for Young's Night Thoughts. And these drawings he did for it are very sketchy, they're mostly in pencil. There's a lot of erasures, there's a lot of scribbling over. And so they leave quite a lot of room for interpretation. Indeed, they have been interpreted in various ways. You can almost get a spectrum of interpretation. You go back to Margoliouth, writing in around the 50s or 60s, and Margoliouth is quite conservative, if not prudish, in his remarks on the drawings. As you go through the 60s, 70s, Bentley, Foster Damon, you do at least acknowledge their eroticism, if not their pornographic qualities. They largely see them in heterosexual terms, although they also allow for quite a lot of hermaphroditic qualities. And then more recently you get to Ackroyd, who sees penises everywhere.
Yeah.
And
who'd have thought it?
Who'd have thought it? Yeah. Guess who? Yeah. And so, as far as I know, there's only one facsimile text of Blake's Vela, which was published by Clarendon in 1963, edited by Bentley. A quite magnificent elephant folio, which actually shows all the pages. And usually you just see a few odd pages with, and the header interpreted by whoever's writing about them. So I thought the thing's called Blake's Vela 9 sketches, and sketches in the sense that we are talking about sketches in the pencil sense, but also these are little playlists with a cast of 6 people. Yeah, only 6. Peter Ackroyd. Everybody loves Peter Ackroyd. I was going to laugh. You've got to mention his name. G.E. Bentley Jr. S. Foster Damon. The Ghost of a Flea. H.M. Margoliouth. And the man who taught Mr. Blake painting in his dreams. No, I couldn't get the Sheffield Amateur Dramatic Society to come down and read this for me. So I'm going to do all the voices. Yeah, you're not going to really get to recognise them all, but you'll get the idea. So there are 9 of them. They're numbered according to the page numbers of Bentley's edition. 3. And it starts with Bentley talking. A naked reclining woman with her right knee bent sharply, her right arm behind her head looking up. An erased ink line. One can clearly see penciled lines belonging to her right arm further back and the flexed right arm of her predecessor. There is a veil to the woman's left which may indicate that she is Vela, or she may be the aged mother. Teenage, maybe. She's Ennian, coy and full of lust. The palm of her left hand rests on her left foot and its extended fingers on the earth. That's the only quite obvious piece of symbolism. Plaits coiled like a fine pair of snakes. Mountainside more Welsh than the fearful Hampstead. Why is she looking so wide, staring wise? Straight through Athona, day and night, reading Greek. And with that Netherlandish forehead, the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. There are numerous other vague lines. She does not look happy. 7. A woman ending in a coiling serpent. She floats on his left side in the sea. Her hair stands up like flames. Her hands are against the sides of her head. He is holding his head in his hands, and his legs were later turned into. She spreads her legs, and half woman and half textual change from serpent to spectre. If it's him or her, cancelled, blushing with desire, till with fierce pain she brought forth Her mouth and eyes are open in horror. Two little infants, her sorrow and woe. 16. Two large feet, apparently in the air. Lummy, where? Walking toward the right, and a figure to the left, which seems female, looks to me like the man who taught Mr. Blake, facing the feet with hands raised in horror, fists up ready to fight Duck Rabbit. A very queer drawing. I see not Louvre as of old, I only see his feet like pillars of fire. The enormous bride and bridegroom, terror, go howl in vain. A pencil drawing which seems to have represented Christ, not in my book. Copy has been erased. 32. A nude woman walking toward the viewer in the attitude of the Medicean Venus, with her left hand by her side and her right hand over her vulva, coyly prudish. You mean that isn't a dildo, or she's half woman, half facing her, but with her back to us, a woman with her closed left hand in the small of her back, idly talking, gazing calm as you like at either the other one's left breast or the aforesaid woman's secrecy. Still, she despised him, calling on his name and knowing him not. Vela and her daughters take to these unworthy devices. 35. Several women on their knees among vegetation. Nude, kneeling woman with her knees apart. Half woman and not half a hard-on. Seems to pull up plants. I'd say caress huge phallic. Pulls up two mandrakes by their tufts. Another nude kneeling woman appears to be watching her, left hand action, and another with her legs apart and her left arm behind her back also watches. In the summer sun and in the vintage, there is an erasure between the legs of this figure. A dark shade is never nonentity. It is an easy thing to please herself in a field of mandrake. 44. One of his mythological personages, a naked, bearded man with a look of pain, half lies in agony and raises his right arm. He is almost a mirror image of the Night Thoughts engraving of a man being touched by Christ, Jesus raising Lazarus to illustrate. I do not think there's much in this suggestion. But in place of Jesus is a naked woman whose head ends in jagged points which may be a crown. Woman has become an object of worship and set herself up to give her laws. On her belly, vague lines like a Gothic shrine, a three-light window over her parts of love. Genitals transformed into an altar or chapel with an erect penis at the centre, forming a kind of holy statue. Good length, but thin as my master's pencil. I've looked and found nothing. Nobody has mentioned the triangular scribble above the first person's right thigh, a dark and extensive place. My master told me was never nonentity. Look hard and you'll see the dots and circles of its complex eyes begetting little monsters who sit mocking. 76. A nude woman descending, arms outstretched, dancing towards us in the attitude of Albion Rose. Glad day! Rudimentary breasts have been added. It is a man with a well-developed chest. The genitalia, large erect penis now erased. Mr. Blake emphasised the chest in an attempt to convert the figure into a female, preliminary to the substitution of scales. I cannot connect this drawing with the text. I can connect nothing with nothing. Don't you quote wastelands to me. You won't make connections like that until you see non-entity's true colour. It is possible it has nothing to do with this poem. The conjectured substitution of one night the seventh for another. You quote critics, I quote poems. The arms and head are very rough. The envy in his limbs like to a blighted tree. 100. A very dirty page. May symbolise the war spirit. A creature with a man's head, an orb of a head, a man in the moon. Short bent hind legs, a goat's hindquarters, hooves arsey-versey, like a fellow I met in a harpy's armpit, who showed me how to catch blood-red non-entities in golden bowls. Jesus forgive your resurrection manners! There is large vegetation in the margins. Long vertical strokes may indicate flames. Hermaphroditic it at length became. The soldiers named it Satan, teeming with endless destruction. Bring me my aquafortis of most merciful pity and compassion. 134. You wouldn't listen, but there's the harpy, the whore of Babylon, as I recall. Bird with long body, dragon tail and woman's head, hair fashionably done, which is ridden by a tiny naked boy. A drawing of mystery whose right hand extends with a long stick, a wand, a whip in one hand and a cup of religion in the other. Didn't I tell you pages ago, for remembrance read futurity passive? They believe it is a dream. Error can never be redeemed.